Hello, Toastmasters, Mr. Toastmaster, and guests. I've had people ask me about data breaches, and in this club specifically, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So what we're going to talk about is a few breaches that are in the news, and we're also going to talk about why companies get breached. I'm also going to take you down a path of what the most common breaches are, how they happen, and what you can do to prevent falling victim to the breaches. So a data breach you probably have all heard of, and you basically have the idea of what it is, and it's someone taking information. It could be a person who's authorized to get at that information, or it could be someone who's not, and taking private information and releasing it to someone who is not authorized to have it. So here's some breaches in the news. I'm going to pop through these fairly quickly, and so you guys over here can see. I'm going to back up a little bit. The first three have been around for a while, and you might have heard of them, but the reason I'm repeating them is because each of them was done a different way, and they're quite interesting. So Target was the first large breach ever heard of in the news that had to do with the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is when more and more devices every day have the Internet linked into them in some way, shape, or form. You can open your garage door, you can even turn on your light bulbs. Everything has a chip in it so that it can communicate with your phone. And those open up new opportunities for criminals to get into your information. TJ Maxx is an older breach, and it was quite interesting the way they did that one as well. So in TJ Maxx's situation, they had people out on the sales floor using wireless devices, and they did not encrypt the data. Someone sat out in the parking lot with a high-powered antenna and scarfed the information as it was floating through the air to go from one place in the network to another. So you always want to encrypt your data. Sony, totally another situation. It's a state actor situation, they call it. That's when a government's involved, and in this case, they did not like the movie that Sony made about North Korea, and so they went after them. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, and why I talk about Sony a lot, is because Sony had opted not to secure their network, and because the CFO said it would cost more to secure the network than to pay for a breach. That is a common misconception in accounting circles, and there are many, many accountants who have given that recommendation to their businesses. And I will tell you that CFO, needless to say, got canned, but it can go further than that, and I really caution anyone who's in accounting to not give that advice. It's very important that you secure your networks. So the next group I want to talk about is card data breaches. And that's what I work with the most, and that's actually the most common type of breach that you'll read about in the news, because the criminals want to get to the money. Now, there are many, many, many of those. Some of the more recent ones that have been up there, GameStop, Home Depot, Arby's, you've heard many of them. You've gotten the notices in the mail, your cards have been replaced. Is there anybody in here who has not been, at least had a card replaced because of a breach? No hands are going up. Okay, maybe one. So it's something to think about, because the reality is once your information gets out there, the second half of that breach, the first half is the criminal getting the data. The second half of it is they're selling it to other criminals. And once your information's out there, you can't get it back. The other thing is, in United States law is based on precedents and what has happened in previous cases, and it is also based on proof of damage. If you go to court and you tell that court that someone stole your data, I deserve some kind of repercussion for that, they will give you something for the inconvenience and for anything you can show receipts for you don't get anything for future damage, and the worst of the damage may not have happened yet. But the good news on the card data breaches is that the cards can be replaced, and there's a method for that. So Verizon, tying back to the accounting discussion, Verizon says that they have two numbers for the average cost of a data breach. Worldwide, it is 4.1 million. In the United States, it is 7.1 million. And it can get a lot higher. Sony's was approaching $1 billion. So that's a situation you don't want to be in. So let's talk a little bit about why companies get breached. I mentioned the accounting syndrome. The other one is that companies think it'll never happen to them. They say, oh, I'm too small, nobody cares about me. Or I don't deal in something that's a real high value, so nobody cares about me. The reality is this. When you look at the internet, there's three portions of the internet. The surface web, which is what most of us see, the wikis, the Googles, the things that we all use every day. The deep web is where the data is. It's residing on databases all over the world that may be tied into the net, and a lot of times that's what the criminals are going for. The dark web is where the criminals reside, and they will share information amongst each other. As soon as someone writes something that is a data scarfing piece of software, they will share it with other criminals. And that way, and you notice I'm saying criminals and not hackers. I don't like to soften this topic one bit. They are criminals. And by sharing the information, it makes it harder for law enforcement to track down the originator. So they share the information, and it goes out fast. So here's a little bit about some breaches I've seen recently. This particular one was at the mobile station at Telegraph and Fordham Road. So what you'll see here is a security tape that's been broken. So gas stations today put security tapes on so that they can tell if anyone has breached that pump, because they will put skimmers on the inside of it. If you see something like this, report it to the station and do not put your card in. This is an inside the pump skimmer. I didn't see this one myself, but one of my customers reported it to me. Someone had put that in their gas pump. So they had breached that security tape, opened it up, put a skimmer on the inside of the pump. People won't see it when they put their card in, but it's driving data. This is the most recent one that I've been working on. Breach at the car wash. And this ties into Internet of Things. So at the car wash, you get a little number. To get that number over to the gas pump, it's interfacing with the card data system. The customer that brought this to us, we had been trying to sell them our services, and they hadn't bought yet. We sent them a proposal. They hadn't bought, they hadn't signed off, and then they notified us a few weeks ago that they did get breached. We did our pilot in December. If they had bought from us at that time, this would not have happened to them. So here's a common attack method. And this happens all the time. So basically, the criminals are going for credentials, and they'll get them one of two ways. One is they use vendor-supplied defaults. When you buy any product, change the logon and the password the first time you set it up, because the vendors have to send it out with defaults so that they can help you get it set up, but after that, you got to change it. Second, they're using insecure remote control. So remote control is a system that enables you to enable service people to get into your computer to help you fix things. There are secure ones that reputable companies use. There are insecure ones that anybody can use, and you want to make sure those are not available on your computer. So you will want to turn those things off. They're Telnet, FTP, some of the RDP, some of the different ways that people can remote in. They have to be secured. So the third thing they do is they install malware, and that's for skimming information. And then finally, the malware siphons the data off, sends it back to the criminal at its source. So the next thing you want to do is analyze your security, and I'm sorry, I didn't realize I'm running over, so I'm going to pop through these fairly quickly. Do you have the door where anybody can crawl in? Or the one with double layer security and a nice watch guard? Or the one where you've got too much security and you can't get your job done? You kind of want to be in that middle one. That's a good dog. So next, securing your system. There's a lot of information here, but I'll pop through it fairly quickly. If you don't need a product or software, get rid of it. If you do need it, keep it current. New security releases are coming out all the time. Windows came out with a bunch of new ones just yesterday. When you turn off your computer today and turn it back on, it's going to upload those new updates. Make sure you have the newest operating system. Make sure you have the newest patches. And you want to make sure your system is set up to accept the new ones automatically. So scan your computer for vulnerabilities. You run a scan, and by the way, Windows comes with Windows Defender, which includes some nice security products for you. Just make sure that that is turned on. So then if you find vulnerabilities on the scan, you got to fix them. You want to implement your anti-malware. Windows Defender does have malware in it, but it's not as good as Malwarebytes. I recommend Malwarebytes. It's a really good one for keeping you out of trouble on the net. Encrypt your data at rest and in transit. Implement your wireless intrusion prevention system. It's a little sensor you can buy that'll block out people that shouldn't be getting it. And a lot of people will say, I don't even use wireless, I don't need that. But it'll keep someone from adding wireless where it doesn't belong as well. And then you want to set your firewall to deny everything that is not authorized. It's a simple deny all statement. You also want to turn on anti-spoofing on your firewall. Change your vendor defaults we mentioned. Use multi-factor authentication for super high security stuff. And that's where you log in with two different things. Your user ID, your password, but then you can also use something like Auth Anvil, which is a version of two-factor authentication. And it just is on your phone. Use a security wallet. My daughter works at a gas station. She said, they replaced my card, I got a new card, that card already got breached. What happened? They said, somebody probably skimmed your card information out of your pocket. Put it in a security wallet so it doesn't get skimmed that way. Or they took it from the card company itself. One of those two things happened in that scenario, because she hadn't even used it yet. Use the EMV. If you have a choice between a company that uses it and does not offer it, I know a lot of them are way behind on implementing it, but given a choice between two stores, I'll always pick the one that has the EMV implemented. And then review your monthly statements every month and scrutinize them. And do not use a debit card for purchases. If you use your debit card for purchases, when they scarf that card data, they're also scarfing your PIN, and they can drain your checking account. So don't use debit cards, use credit cards. All right, so I apologize that that went over, and I don't have time for questions. But if you want to talk after the meeting, I'd be happy to talk with you.
Okay, let's take a minute.